Israel has been defeated. It's been defeated in its attempt to stop justice, to stop accountability for its genocidal assault against the Palestinian people. It's been defeated at the International Criminal Court, where it has attempted to sabotage the attempt to bring Benjamin Netanyahu and his former defense minister, Yoav Gallant, to trial for their war crimes and crimes against humanity. Meanwhile, revelations that the British government threatened the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, a British lawyer, has been covered up by the mainstream media. I'll come on to that because it is deeply, deeply disturbing and sinister and implicates the former British Foreign Secretary David Cameron in allegedly deeply unlawful conduct by the British government. Now, I'll start with the defeat of Israel at the International Criminal Court. In May 2024, the chief prosecutor, Karim Khan, KC, requested arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu and his former defense minister, Yoav Gallant. Those were war crimes and crimes against humanity, which initially started or centered principally on starvation, deliberate starvation. November last year, the International Criminal Court finally issued its arrest warrants against them both. That imposed a legal duty on member states like Britain, for example, or France or other European nations to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant, to treat them as wanted men, people who should be hauled before a court to face charges for their grievous crimes. Now, despite massive pressure, which I'll come on to, but it included US politicians, US Republican politicians, threatening the ICC in advance, the letter to the ICC ominously ended, "You have been warned." The US under Trump then imposed crippling sanctions on the chief prosecutor, Karim Khan, as well as judges. This is really gruesome stuff. I wrote about the fate of one of the French judges, Nicolas Guillot, in The Guardian last month. As I wrote, when he used Expedia to book a hotel in his own country, the reservation was cancelled within hours. He is blacklisted, he says, by much of the world's banking system, unable to use most bank cards. Guillot, you see, has been sanctioned by the United States, putting him on a 15,000-strong list alongside al-Qaeda terrorists, drug cartels, and Vladimir Putin. Why? Because alongside two of the judges of the International Criminal Court pre-trial Chamber 1, he approved the arrest warrants for Netanyahu and Gallant, as well as Mohammed Deif, the former commander of Hamas's military wing. Should note that arrest warrant was withdrawn because he was killed by Israel. Guillot and his colleagues had actively engaged, they said, in the ICC's illegitimate and baseless actions targeting America or our close ally Israel. That's the US rationale for imposing those sanctions, or are now barred from entering the US, but that's the least of the consequences. Now, it wasn't just the ICC targeted, also the incredible and inspiring Francesca Albanese, the UN special rapporteur in the Palestinian territories. Let's just hear what she's gone through.
I've received threats from all corners, and on top of it, yes, the unilateral coercive measures that make a non-person of me. I cannot exist in the global economy. I cannot have a credit card. I need to borrow money or borrow credit cards, which is not even always possible because not all countries allow you to use a credit card that is not yours. I had a US medical insurance that refused to reimburse me because of the sanctions. But I also had a hotel room booked in my name by the European Parliament, and it was cancelled. It's important that people understand the extent and the great length the United States, Israel, and others would go to silence the voice of justice, the voice of human rights. But they will not succeed. They will not succeed. And it's important that people understand that we are frail and we are weak only if we are isolated.
Now, I mentioned the ICC arrest warrants focused on, for example, the crime of starvation. Obviously, very likely, to say the least, that more charges against Netanyahu and Gallant are forthcoming, but also warrants against other Israeli politicians. But what's been happening now is the ICC has ordered any further charges or warrants to be kept secret. But the pressure imposed on the ICC has been resisted. Israel launched a legal challenge, knowing that it had the US with a massive gun against the head of all these people in the ICC. They launched a legal challenge to the ICC to stop investigation into its genocide against the Palestinian people. They clearly hoped the pressure would break the institution, but the appeals judges at the ICC have rejected their attempt. As Al Jazeera report, in their decision issued on Monday, judges refused to overturn a lower court decision allowing the ICC prosecutor to investigate alleged crimes in Israel's war in Gaza following the Hamas-led attack on southern Israel on October 7, 2023. The decision clears the way for the continuation of the court's investigation, which led to the issuance of arrest warrants in November for Netanyahu and Gallant over alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity. And it goes on to say Israel does not recognize the jurisdiction of the Hague-based court and has repeatedly denied committing war crimes in Gaza. It was a bit like, denying the earth is round, except it's life and death on a mass scale. Just on the question of Israel refusing jurisdiction, this was, for example, this statement was issued by the Israel's Prime Minister's office. Israel is not a member of the International Criminal Court, does not recognize its jurisdiction. The ICC and its prosecutor have arrogated to themselves an authority they do not possess that a politically motivated attempt to criminalize the Jewish state. They're talking bullshit. That's not how it works. How it works is very straightforward. The state of Palestine was admitted to the International Criminal Court many years ago. That means the ICC has jurisdiction over Palestine. So that means that's why they issued arrest warrants against Hamas leaders, because Palestinians are subject to the ICC jurisdiction, but also it covers crimes committed on Palestinian territory. Now, Israel has committed genocide and multiple war crimes and crimes against humanity as part of that on territory which is on the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court, which is why then the member states of the ICC have a legal responsibility to ensure the arrest of anyone, doesn't matter where they are, who have committed war crimes and crimes against humanity against another member state, which is, of course, Palestine. That's the whole basis. They're talking nonsense. It doesn't matter if they're a member or not. They committed crimes on territory where there is ICC jurisdiction. That's the point. Now, the claim about this is about criminalizing the Jewish state. I mean, again, this constant attempt to conflate anti-Semitism, a very real evil, with attempts to hold Israel to account for committing the most heinous crimes imaginable in full view of the world. Not all of them. A lot of the crimes, huge numbers of crimes, of course, not committed in front of cameras. But the evidence, of course, is overwhelming, and not least because Israeli leaders and officials kept boasting and confessing to their heinous crimes. The idea this is about it being a Jewish state is derisory nonsense. It has nothing to do with the fact that the Israeli state calls itself the Jewish state. And of course, many the consensus of genocide scholars in Israel, and Israeli genocide scholars, for example, the American-Israeli genocide scholar, Professor Emma Balatov at Brown University, one of the leading experts in the world on the Holocaust, is that this is genocide, which is just a statement of obvious facts, unfortunately for Israel and their particular case. And of course, across the world, Jewish people have spoken out against the genocide. It's just awful nonsense, which rids the very, very evil of anti-Semitism of its meaning. I mean, in terms of actually what's going on here, the Republican Senator Lindsey Graham told the chief prosecutor before the arrest warrants were issued that the ICC was made for Africa and thugs like Putin. Now, the whole point was, this was supposed to be a court that just did what the West wanted. It wasn't supposed to turn its fire of justice against the West. That's what's caused this massive uproar. Now, on to what the UK tried to do in that spirit. This was an exclusive first reported in June of this year by Middle East Eye, who did brilliant work. Now, their work on this has been ignored by almost the entire media for months. They reported the British government privately threatened to defund and withdraw from the International Criminal Court if it issued arrest warrants for Israeli leaders. David Cameron, then Foreign Secretary of the Sunak's Conservative government, made the threat in April 2024 in a heated phone call with Cameron Khan, the British chief prosecutor of the court. Cameron told Khan that applying for warrants for Netanyahu and Gallant would be like dropping a hydrogen bomb. Cameron said it was one thing to investigate and prosecute Russia for war of aggression in Ukraine, but quite another to prosecute Israel when it was defending itself from the attacks of 7th October. He claimed the warrants would have profound implications in Britain and within his own Conservative Party. Cameron then said that if the ICC issued arrest warrants for Israeli leaders, the UK would defund the court and withdraw from the Rome Statute. Now, the Middle East Eye notes the statement at the time from the chief prosecutor, Cameron Khan, who's clearly under huge pressure, not least from the British government, pleading for full independence and impartiality. He said, "I insist that all attempts to impede, intimidate, or improperly influence the officials of this court must cease immediately." Now, The Guardian last week reported that Karim Khan had formally made the allegation in the submission to the ICC defending his decision to prosecute Netanyahu. They say it was the UK government, doesn't name Cameron, but that is who it was, as the Middle East Eye noted many months ago. The brilliant declassified UK report yesterday that the Foreign Office's top lawyer advised David Cameron to meet with the International Criminal Court's chief prosecutor, Karim Khan, to show Britain's strong support for the institution. Cameron, who was then Foreign Secretary, received the advice just days before he reportedly threatened in a phone call to defund the ICC if Khan pursued arrest warrants for Israeli leaders. Heavily redacted emails obtained through a Freedom of Information request and shared with declassified show that Khan's office was keen to confirm a meeting with Cameron for the week of the 15th of April 2024. Why is that significant? Because Cameron must have been aware of the UK's legal responsibilities as a founding member of the ICC. That's his civil servants were clearly trying to direct him to abide by the responsibilities of being a member state of the ICC. Now, it was established, the ICC, let's just go into what happened here in terms of how serious this is. It was established by the Rome Statute. Article 40 of the statute says, the judges shall be independent in the performance of their functions. Article 42, the office of the prosecutor shall act independently as a separate organ of the court. A member of the office shall not seek or act on instructions from any external source. Article 86, states parties shall, in accordance with the provisions of the statute, cooperate fully with the court in its investigation and prosecution of crimes within the jurisdiction of the court. Now, the UK incorporated the ICC into domestic law via the International Criminal Court Act of 2001. And furthermore, it's also a signatory to the Vienna Convention of the Law of Treaties. That says every treaty in force is binding upon the parties to it and must be performed by them in good faith. Now, does this mean David Cameron's going to be arrested? I wish. No, unfortunately not. But the reported threats show that the British government sought to violate international law to protect Israel from legal accountability for its genocidal onslaught against the Palestinian people. And they are willing to blow up whatever remains of the so-called international rules of law, which the West, of course, always picked and choose from. They're willing to destroy that order to protect Israel as it commits genocide. And this, I'm afraid, is all part and parcel of the disintegration of the world as we know it, the descent into violent barbarism. And it is also a story of the decline of the West, which I'm writing a book about, as you may know from the videos where I've talked about the fall of the West. But it's true, that's what's happening. And we should call it out for what it is. But this is damning stuff indeed. Obviously, we should celebrate that Israel's attempts to stop justice in their tracks have failed, but we should very loudly condemn the attempts of Western governments to blow up the so-called international rules-based order to protect their ally having committed one of the great crimes of our age. Please like and subscribe, leave your thoughts and your comments. Do help us take on the pro-genocide media at patreon.com/owners84. You make all of this possible. Share the video. I'll speak to you in a bit.